My name is and I'm here to do a presentation on coastal erosion in our community. We currently have like 10 miles of beachfront property in Dillingham, from Kanaknak to up Wood River. And I didn't even think about it till now that we own a lot of property up the Wood River that's eroding, changing. And it's happening more at our coastlines by the bay than in the rivers. We're probably losing, I don't know, I would say 10 or 15 acres of land every couple of years. And it's don't seem like much when we just take an inch off the beach. It ends up being pretty significant. Is what I'm really getting at. The Curyung Tribal Council had worked with Chris Ayu, a geologist. He helped us put up observations and we had a slideshow to show you about what they have done in the past, I don't know, it was like 30 or 40 years. You can say that now.
It looks really edible. I'm just chuckling at your steaks.
Oh, yeah.
People are used to adapting to change, especially in the shorter term, being able to move with the seasons and move when you need to. And now we're seeing the places that these communities have settled are now experiencing these big environmental changes. Yeah, communities aren't able to just pick up and leave the way they used to.
So this has been the quintessential erosion monitoring site. Major infrastructure here with the sewage lagoon. So this project's called Stakes for Stakeholders. I'm funded through Alaska Sea Grant, and it's all about trying to provide the tools for local environmental coordinators to measure erosion. This camera here used to be maybe 50, 75 feet back from the bluff, you know, when we first put it in 2016. So now it's a perfect marker of how much erosion has occurred there.
Okay, so you can actually see, like, right here where it sort of turns from dirt to peat vegetation, the waves are actually kind of undercutting right here. And you could imagine that the material on top of that would eventually get compromised enough to fall back down, and then that's what's sort of driving the erosion here.
Over that long period, erosion's no big deal, but when we start putting infrastructure in, that becomes more than just regular natural erosion. It becomes actual a hazard. And then that combines with the fact that the climate is really dramatically warming now. In the winter, you have sea ice that often buffers the coastline. And so with less and less sea ice, you lose that natural seawall. And so we have all these other processes that are working together to cause increased rates of erosion over the past.
Hey, good morning.
Morning. Good morning. How you doing, Norm?
We often get that question of, you know, what are you finding out that a local resident wouldn't know? And we always respond with nothing, but the sort of synergy that happens is that we're able to very precisely measure what they're seeing every day. And then that is just a tool that local leaders can use to gather either state or federal help to either mitigate erosion or to adapt. Studying the coastal zone is very interesting to me because it's the interface of where the ocean, the climate, the land, and the people kind of all come together. So it's something that is not only academically interesting to pursue, but it's also societally relevant.
In technical terms, that's a very floaty buoy.
Because it has a GPS on it and I can track it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah,
That's science.
Now we gotta wait 1 hour before I can know if it's working. Mean wave direction, period, and spread, wind speed, sea surface temperature. Yeah, this is exciting. This would be great for the community.
In the end, this data isn't for us, it's for the communities. And so we really want to identify ways we can adjust our data to help better equip them with the tools that they need and the resources that they need to plan for the future.
Yeah, man, this is pretty valuable for the city.
Yeah.
Having this stuff.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we're hoping.
We have been assisting with this one for like almost 50 years now, since 1980. And it's had its ups and downs. We've actually lost a few cameras, had them vandalized, actually watched them disappear into the water. But there's a few spots, if continue to the next slide. There's a few spots we had put up monitoring cameras by the sewer lagoon, and then
Under the runway.
yeah, by Shades, and then out Kanaknak by Hianos. And I think they picked these spots because there's mass erosion going on. We're losing like 10 to 15 meters in spots a year. Well, yeah, it's yearly.
And the 15 feet per year.
And
So on zone 8, there is more than, currently we only have a total of 3 cameras doing an actual time-lapse video in our community. However, what they're tracking, the geologists and their students when they come from Fairbanks, is they're actually measuring how much loss. And you'll see that later in one of Philip's slides. But in zone A, that's really critical because that's the mouth of the Wood River, and that deeply impacts the sewer lagoon. And that is slowed down slightly for erosion, but that's critical infrastructure for the community of Dillingham and the people who utilize that, who have access to that. Zone B is the mouth of, that's the mouth of Amu Creek now. A lot of you may know that as Squaw Creek, or but now it's been recently renamed as Amu Creek. That is critical because it's the road that goes around the end of the runway and is on the main way to the hospital, and that is where Zone C is being measured, is the Kanaknak Road that goes out to the hospital. And so they're measuring all of this because it greatly impacts our infrastructure and how the community of Dillingham gets around town and gets to these areas of great need.
in zone C in front of Hianos on Kanaknak Road, actually, I've watched it just in the 6 months that I've been employed with the tribe. I've watched at least 20 feet of beach go away. It's pretty drastic in spots. And something else I've learned is with the climate change, done presentations about climate change, and he's got handouts over there too, but with climate change, the erosion is happening faster than it was before. Our coastlines on the outside are going to go way faster than they have previously. The wind, the weather, the rain, the permafrost, all these little things are going to add up, and I don't think it's going to be like a dramatic wave, but it's going to be a slow and dramatic wave. It's not going to happen overnight. I'd be more worried about flooding than erosion. I was looking at NOAA's presentation, and they say our Dillingham is at 23 feet above sea level. And we have 23-foot tides now. I don't know where they took their measurements, but does that mean we're below sea level at high water sometimes? I'm sure the rain and the wind and the weather makes things change. But yeah, this next slide that we're looking at here is, it shows the coastline above Snake Point and the loss it's been since Dave started in 1980. The outside green line is where it was, and the inside green line is where it is now. And that 42 years. And here's another one, zone C, where it goes in front of Squaw Creek, it looks like.
Amu Creek now.
Yeah. And you see how the red lines and the green lines and the yellow lines, the red lines is where it's eroding the fastest. And we're probably losing like 10 feet a year at the mouth of Squaw Creek. It's changed a lot in the past 5 years that I've been traveling that way. And here's an overview of all three of them.
So these are estimated rates of the meters. So for every meter, there's 3 feet, right? So for like the Amu Creek, it's about 15 feet per year that area is actually eroding at. And then this just shows the red lines are the more intrusive and more dangerous sections that are eroding at a very fast rate.
Something else, the bottom one shows actually Kanaknet Beach and how the erosion has slowed some with probably with the seawall build and stuff. When we make solid structures against the beach, we might stop it there, but the force bounces and goes somewhere else. So it's going somewhere else. And yeah, we might have stopped it in front of Dillingham and slowed it down on Kanaknek, but there's somewhere else it's happening. The force will stop, the water just keeps on coming. Here's a actual graph that shows the increase of erosion from 2011 to 2022 is the tan, and the blue is 1980 to 2011, and it shows you the increase of the erosion with climate change. We've had like almost a half a meter increase of erosion in the 10 years, 20 years difference, 20 years. It's increasing pretty fast. And then here's another chart showing that where the coastline was in 1980 and where it is in 2020. We just had problems with the sewer lagoon camera last spring, no, fall, last fall. We had to replace it. Remember how he was talking about the peat moss in the water, digging under the peat moss and making the land fall? It's like that really bad there. It's where there's growth, the land is still there, but where there's no growth, it just washes away. There's a lot of the point. Snake Point's going to be gone, I would say. It'll be a straight drive from Snake Point to Dragnet for too long. You'll be able to go through HUD maybe, and then, but that whole tundra out past the bluff is all going to wash away, I believe. I'd like to thank you all for attending. If you have any questions,
I have a question. I've kind of watched these kind of all-tide docks down there. To me, it almost looks like they're creating dirt around them. And is that my imagination, or is it happening?
I think with anything, when you try to divert water or block water, like Philip was saying, is that energy is going to go somewhere. Sometimes you're going to have some like erosion beyond like a seawall or a bulkhead. It might stop it immediately at the base of that, but then that force of the water hits that, and it's going to come around and most likely swirl and cause movement of the big boulders and such things like that. So anytime you place anything in the water, it's going to change the course of the water.
Yeah, well, so my concern, I'm on the port committee, is it building up dirt, kind of starting to block the harbor access? And the other thing is for both of them, if they keep building up dirt, they won't be all tight in the future. But there again, I don't watch it carefully, and I don't know if you have any transepts that are right there because I could easily be fooled by that stuff.
Is it okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So because when I was at BPNA, I'm the one who pretty much got this program off the ground, and when Chris Mayo came out initially, and we met with the city and at the boat harbor trying to figure out where to set up the time-lapse cameras and take measurements. That's why it made more sense to put the time-lapse camera and do measurements at Kenny and Annie Shades, and then obviously, secured permission. Several years ago, there was also a tidal gauge installed, and down by, not too far from the dock. And I don't know if that's still there, if it's still collecting measurements or not, but that's something that could be followed up with by these guys, with UAF Chris Mayo and so forth. Because we used to take the measurements from that several years ago. And again, who knows whether it got washed out, because as, Philip and Patty, but Philip's saying that sometimes, people are just curious, and then things like the time-lapse cameras, they get kind of removed or, whatever. And that's why sometimes the outreach, having some of those videos is really important for letting people know how critical it is to collect this information.
And I know from personal conversations with people who live along the edge, they have said that sandbar keeps getting bigger and my land is going away faster. Mm-hmm. And it was never like this before. But, over the course of time, rivers and creeks naturally change depending on the amount of water that's being flooded into there. But it also could be because more dirt's being put out in the middle, that the water course is being pushed. I'm not, Philip and I are not specialists. We're just like you guys, we're residents of this community who obviously have a concern for the environment and what is actually occurring.
And that's where tracing this and doing the, collecting the data, and so that, everybody's in a better position to do forecasts. It's really important because, if you look at Oscar, who grew up, 76, and what it was like on Wood River, he was a kid, and how that's all changed. It's pretty phenomenal. And then somewhere too, keep in mind, and Dan, you were involved when Todd Rannenbell was collecting, so again, he was collecting subsurface, and studying that. And then, like in that video too, I still remember, this goes back, I don't know, whenever that other gauge was installed, just past the city, harbor and so forth, that got gobbled up by tenders and other boats, because of the weather when they'd come in and set their anchors out. Somehow it got dragged away. So
That 80 loss.
no, that was even before, because I flew them around to look for it and finally found it. But
The most recent one that I know of, they put off the city dock, and it stayed there for like 2 months in the summer. And it's actually documented back there in one of those. I read about it.
So Philip has in the back on the table, he brought 3 different pamphlets that we asked, you can breeze through them if you would like to. They're at the very end by the sign-in, I believe, or they're on this side of the table in the back. And those are the most recent draft copy of the last couple of years. We don't have those maps yet, but what we did have was through 2022. Philip and I hung those up on the back wall over there, and that is the most recent measurements of our coastline, and we are supposed to be getting new ones from the UAF ACGL, who they'll be bringing those or sending those to us when they are produced. And if you have a question that we did not answer, please realize that we are not specialists, we are not geologists, we are here sharing the information that we know and that our tribe is involved in. And if we don't have an answer for you, then we'll find one for you and get it back to you. So there is a sign-in sheet in the back. If you wanted to put your phone number, your email on there, and if you wanted, we can find information and get it back out to everybody who has attended today.
Roughly how long ago did they extend the seawall down to the point from the harbor there?
95,
96.
And what kicked off that? Like what prompted them to act on that one?
The effect of it was going to have a great big effect on the city. It was washing away the dock, the Peter Pan dock, the housing. It was going to have.
And that's the only harbor.
Is the erosion that's going up the wood enough to warrant extending a seawall up that way, or is that infrastructure not really valuable?
We have presented that material to the city, and they doing what they have to do with it. It's out of our hands.
And I think, you're talking so many millions of dollars. And again, just, in the back of people's minds, not only the scientists, but local folks, others, for the cost. I mean, to what extent is it going to help really correct the problem? And then just keep in mind too, and this is something that, we've always encouraged tribal environmental programs to do, is talk to the older folks. If you were to talk to, again, somebody like Oscar, who used to be the beach gang boss at Peter Pan in the early 70s, was always taught to observe what's going on. You can also gather a lot of information that's helpful for explaining and what their views are in terms of what might happen in the future. So, because the story, the response varies so much. If you were Todd Rannenbell, he was going, why did Billingham ever get relocated to where it is now? It's going to disappear in 50, 60 years. But anyways.
And I think that's really, I pulled this slide back up only very specifically because it kind of shows the length and at the rate that it is really eroding. And, Dr. O'Connell probably has memories of a long time ago when you would be downtown and look and you could see the houses where no longer, that now it's water. I'm sure that is probably a memory that you have. Or how far away the water was. I remember this, is driving from Kanakana or driving to the hospital long ago on the gravel road. You would look out and the water was way out there. Now you look out there and the water is right there. And that's kind of a critical infrastructure to get to our healthcare. So these are things that just people should be aware of, and they are still being studied. Our tribe thinks that this is very important, and that's why Philip set this outreach up, was to let people know that this is occurring. It is occurring at a fast rate, and there's a young lady in the back.
I had a couple of questions and comments. I know that the Army Corps of Engineers built the seawall, I believe, right? And they obviously monitor the drift spoils and things like that as well. I wondered if the Corps had done any studies on erosion or drift spoils impact. And then also, the city is supposed to manage the dock. I don't think the city would ever be the budget to extend the wall, let alone maintain it into the future. I guess my question was, has the Corps put in any effort in research?
Dan is looking at me like he has an answer.
Yeah, Dan, you probably know the Port Committee.
I haven't read anything from the Army Corps of Engineers about the erosion in Bristol Bay
There's some
area.
really old
reports. There is some, but it's not something I think what the Corps is doing is, here's our project, this is what we're here for, we're gonna dredge out into the bay, let's get permission, they get the permission, they get the permits, and then they do it. I don't know, I'm assuming that's the way because that's the way I would run my business. I'm not gonna spend a lot of extra money to figure out other stuff. I'm just gonna say, this is the way that I wanna do it, and here's what it's gonna cost. And so I don't know. I don't know if they're aware. I'm sure they're aware that this is an issue, because I know it's a concern within the harbor itself. There's a massive amount of erosion occurring in the small boat harbor, to the point where power lines have become visible and literally hanging down, that you can see them. And that's what some of this last year work was to do, was to extend underground power and move it all the way back against Peter Pan. And then I know the city was looking at doing new floats and stuff like that for the harbor. I don't know where any of that stuff is. That's something I haven't been following. But your city planner should have that information, or the city manager. So if there's, my recommendation in this case is, because I don't have it, would to be reach out to the city of Dillingham and either ask for the city manager or the city planner, maybe Public Works, or the harbor master, or one of those positions.
I can add a little bit, maybe. There was a port committee meeting, the last 2 weeks. I'm trying to remember what all was said. I believe we have a $5 million appropriation from the state to do some work within the harbor. And I think they're trying to chain that together with some federal money. There's some real hope, which is interesting, because I got on the committee something like over 20 years ago, and we thought we were going to get work done back then. And then Corps of Engineers suddenly reinterpreted the whole grant structure. And I was excited we were going to get sheet pile in there that summer, and boom, it went away. And maybe we're finally going to get it. So now it's over quadruple the one spent. But I thought there was a city did a study. There was an uproar about that spoils being blown out into the bay. And I believe there was some study that the Corps The dredge spoils
Okay.
out of this dredge, you know,
Yeah.
because people were swearing up and down when it was causing problems out there. And the Corps or somebody did some sort of a fairly brief study, and I think they declared it wasn't a problem. I'm not entirely convinced myself.
Yeah, I think that's in their interest. The Corps is not usually the best appreciator of science. It would be interesting if UAF or something studied the dredge spoils.
And another person I talked to is Norm Van Baxter, going back in the day when he was with Peter Pan and you know, where all those boats are stored, all the dredge spoils, they built that all up. Otherwise, it was going to get thrown out, you know, into the river and cause changes once again. And the only other thing I recall was when the Corps of Engineers wanted to like encompass the city, you know, the dock there. And a lot of people, including people like Oscar, objected. They said it's so screwed up already. If you do that, you're going to cause problems, just even more problems getting in and out of the boat harbor. So.
And there's been massive, rapid erosion right into the harbor in the last 4 or 5 years. I was down there one day and saw a huge chunk fall off, and it was swirling. Yeah. And now you got to go way out like this. And in my 30 years here, it used to be a lot straighter out. But there's also the Corps doesn't pay for dredging of the entrance, only this footprint. So we're also discussing at the harbor meeting that we might be able to adjust that footprint of where they dredge. Frankly, I've forgotten more about what the meeting was and what they put a lot of information out.
And that makes sense because, yeah, so I think it was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they quit using a section of the floats because that, even though there's a big piling there and anchoring, it is no longer anchored.
Yes.
And so they can't put the floats there to dock the boats. And that's how come now all of a sudden we have these floats and everything's pushed that way. And there's nothing on this end of the harbor that's closest to the harbor master's houses because there's no place to anchor to. So I know it's problematic. There's a lot of different parts and pieces that are involved in this. And yeah, I think like becoming involved in your local government and asking questions, asking, you know, these are things that we don't have the answers to on behalf of the city, but I encourage you to reach out to them and communicate directly with them.
And they have a lot of the data already because, you know, a lot of what started in Dillingham with UAF goes back to a Penn State Polaris grant. And it was really lucky that, I mean, again, the whole idea is you got to get all parties together to collaborate and share the information and work together to move forward. Because it's really been very fortunate for Dillingham that the cost of doing this erosion monitoring is not nearly as high as it would be if you were just simply hiring engineers. So the Polaris grant for like 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, picked up the cost of bringing UAF staff that work with local communities here in Dillingham and just a couple other communities to, you know, gather that information, you know, and share it. But everything's really got a high cost, and now it's really unclear what money might actually filter down.
And I think that hits for every existing program right now is in that boat. So
I'd like to add a couple more things, you know, as far as really, you know, the natural course of rivers. I believe a long time ago, Al Pinito was dealing maps, old maps of this area. Mm-hmm. And I've also seen some other photos where the main channel was from here was way over towards Queen and all over there, and they had sailing ships and everything. It was fascinating. And because you have something else, and real quick, the other thing is Gene Barrett and former harbor master and current Danny Miller should have some of this history on outfall studies and just kind of personal knowledge of what's going on out there. So I don't want to delay the next installment.
No, I know, and this is a hot button topic for our community. It really is. It affects everybody, from me who has nothing to do with commercial fishing or, or any coastal concerns, except for when it comes subsistence time. When I want to go subsistence fishing, that's the only time that it affects me.
It also has impact on Kanakanak Beach.
Right, and that's the thing is for years and years, Kanakanak Beach has graves that have, remains that have come out, and this is all just because of erosion. But long ago, that was enough land around there to be an actual burial site. So if you think about that, I mean, it's astronomical to think. And even there is a current public or city graveyard down there that it is also a concern, because the road itself is starting to become a danger. And so it's like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of important things that are being affected in our community by this erosion.
And keep in mind too, when Kanakanak, the Health Corporation, expanded and the road and so forth, they have engineers. They also compiled quite a bit of information. And again, my pitch has always been, you get everybody sitting around the table, preferably around one like this, sharing information, figuring out who can then do what so they can, we maximize, the limited resources we have. So, but again, the Health Corporation, they collected quite a bit of information too through their engineers when they expanded into the road.
So we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to burn through my presentation real quickly. Thank you, Philip. I really appreciate all your hard work and completing the presentation. This one, so at the Curyung Tribal Council, I work for the environmental program, and part of that program, and Philip's a tribal member, so part of that is we participate in the IGAP, Indian General Assistance Program, and there's many different steps included in that, and one of them is healthy homes and clean air. So very quickly, I'm just going to go through this. And this is, honestly, these are just some of my own personal pictures I just threw in there that shows the importance of how smoke or having clean air can impact you and your home. Really, our goal is just to help you improve your indoor air quality and know the dangers and how you can help increase your air quality, as well as increase some of the safety items that in your home that you can do to help protect your home and your air quality. Different things that actually can affect it are wildland fires, which in the very recent years, we've had a huge amount of wildland fires, especially the one across from Wood River, everyone called it the McClung fire. That one sent ash out at my house. Ash was dropping at mile 4 on the Lake Road. That's how large this impact was. You can have house fires or wood stoves in your home, humidity, mold. A lot of ones that are overlooked are existing medical conditions, things like asthma, COPD, maybe just allergic or allergies. Excuse me. Those are things that are all can affect. I'm going to just show you a real quick video. This one is 2 minutes and 2 seconds. This one. Oops. Tab.
Yeah.
Can you make that link work?
Don't know.
Hang on 1 second. I had it open earlier, so I apologize.
I don't know, it could be bad erosion.
Yeah.
Hope not there.
So it's not gonna allow me to play this for some reason, and I'm not sure exactly why, but that's fine. This was just really about campfires, backyard burns, being careful, making sure that you are in Alaska because we're so cold, we have root systems that go very, very long ways, and they're not very deep. So if you do have a campfire in your backyard, just make sure that it's on a surface that isn't gonna, or an area that's highly vegetation, close to trees. It can get into that vegetation and cause fires to pop up 10, 15 feet away. So just be careful and make sure that you're watering down the extra space around your campfire. And honestly, just to be cautious as you are doing your outside activities. They say the safest fire is a no fire, but that's no fun when you're sitting on the beach or hanging out at home and have friends over, or whatever it is that you're doing. Just make sure that you are burning smart. This is an actual picture that I took from my porch, believe it or not, and that's lightning up towards a Legnigic. I was taking a video, so I was able to stop this and take a picture of the video that showed the lightning strike as it occurred. This was 2 years ago. And as you know, I remember some thunder and lightning when I was a young adult, but I don't ever really remember them being as much as they are now. So, and my memory isn't that long, so I don't know if there's others in the room that have a longer memory than me. But I think this, like the erosion, this could be from some environmental changes in our area. And actually, 80% of wildfires are actually caused by people. So it's just, that's where it needs to be, that people need to be more cognizant of their campfires, if they're burning trash or if they're letting off fireworks. I know with the increased heat index that we've had here, higher winds and a lot of dried out vegetation, as there has been fires that have been started by people who throw their lit cigarette out the window. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. Just people need to be a little bit more careful.
They know the cause of that most recent McClung fires?
That was by lightning.
Okay.
That was a totally natural occurrence, and that was incredible to watch the Canadian planes come in. Did anyone else get to see those? They came in and scooped the water. That was amazing.
We also had a remote control plane that right around New Year's burned up a whole bunch of ground out past the hospital.
Yeah.
We almost went to Manicotic. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, and that was just from him flying his little, that was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the big fire in Nurka. And that was, I mean, that was huge. That was probably, what, 25 years ago? The trees are, yep.
And that was one where there were fire. I was putting fire out like this, and I turn around and this tree explodes behind me. It was so scary.
And there's been reports of other fires in our community where people have had like a little fire pit in their yard. And it's got, they're just not paying attention. It's not something that is a thought. And then all of a sudden the neighbor's yard is on fire. So I remember that as well. Wild on fire, youth with matches and lighters, like you were just saying, weather-related, lightning, high winds, this is becoming more and more frequent, especially in our area. some of the things like Dan, you were saying is like creating that fire break, same deal here. So for prevention, instead of waiting until it becomes an issue, you should probably start now. We don't have any snow, so this is a great time to start. Pretty soupy out there though. Teach your children not to play with matches, obtain a local burn permit, make sure that you're checking the weather and the wind conditions prior to starting any fire. In the back, I did print off the City of Dillingham's burn permit. And before you burn, you should get a burn permit, notify that you have to follow the little rules. There's some safety information on there. And believe it or not, there is actually a burn permit for outside of our immediate area. We'll get to that in just a second. In the back, I also have this handout, something similar, and we're not gonna watch the video. There's a handout in the back that you can reference just because we're running so short on time. But this just talks about building and creating a defensible space around your home. So then that way you do continue to stay safe on your property and that you are limiting fuel to a fire. These are some of the things I talked about earlier. There is, do you need a state permit? You absolutely do. Like if you go camping up at the lakes, you should get a state DNR burn permit. And this one here is the actual City of Dillingham burn permit. It gives you the information on the bottom, like keeping tops on your 55-gallon drum when you're burning. Don't go more than 4 by 4 feet. Don't make it stack it like more than 4 feet high. It's called a small scale burn permit because it's a small area or small thing that you're going to be burning, not a large burn. Same thing for the state of Alaska. This is Department of Natural Resources, their burn permit. When we go camping in the summertime, this is something that I print off and I make sure that I have this with me. And the reason is because when you go onto their website and print it off, if you see over there in the bottom where the top portion of this page, right here, as soon as you hit print, it automatically changes the date for you. And these burn permits expire annually. So December 31st of every year, they're done. And January 1, you go and get a new one. This is really important for small scale burn permit for DNR. There is a time limit that you need one and that is April 1 to August 31st. After that, you don't particularly need to get it. There's information about reporting a wildland fire within Dillingham. Dial 911. We do have 911 here. It works. If you're outside, let's say you're camping and you're up at the lake somewhere beyond, 911 isn't going to help you. Most likely it's going to be your neighbors, but you should call this 800 number and report the wildfire so they can get additional assistance, maybe a ranger. Hopefully they're still there. Some things that a lot of us are very aware of are wood stoves. Some information about wood stove safety. Really make sure that you have your wood stove installed correctly. Make sure your stacks are installed correctly and use the 3-2-10 method for installing your wood stove stack. And this is just making sure that you're far enough away from the peak of the home so it doesn't filter back into the house, and that you're far enough away from other structures. And that kind of gives you a range for installing it. Medical issues. Most of our time is spent inside. 90% of our time is spent inside of a building. So for air quality, it's really important for you to make sure that your space that you're spending time in is dust is collected, it's vacuumed or swept on a regular spaces, and reducing any allergens that could cause, like asthma and asthma attack. And depending on, and if you notice household chemicals is on here, this is where people come in. Philip and I had had a long conversation about this previously, is this like, you walk in somewhere and you go, wow, it smells great in here. It smells really clean, or, ooh, that's pretty powerful. That, even though it could smell clean, that could cause some people to have some sort of a allergy reaction, possibly an asthma attack. I know when we go into L&M now, there's a big sign on the front of L&M Supplies that says this is a fragrance-free business. And so they're basically asking people, because of these kinds of issues, please don't come in here wearing a lot of cologne or perfume, or so.
Except the bug spray.
Oh, that's that's a necessity.
Survive.
Yeah. Some of the solutions for asthma and respiratory issues: use filters on your home heating system. Make sure that they're maintained and changed on a regular basis. Use a HEPA filter in your vacuum cleaner to prevent all those air particles from being pushed around. Keep your windows closed on poor air quality days. And on your phone now, when you go to the weather on your app, it tells you what the air quality is. So it's not really that hard to find anymore about air quality. Using a fan in your bathroom, things that we know. We don't want to have mold in our house. That's another environmental factor. Don't allow people to smoke inside of your home. Make them go outside. So here in this, there's some of the information that I pulled. I'm gonna shrink these people. And we kind of talked about this earlier with some of the fire department. And I have learned that the Dillingham Volunteer Fire Department will come out and do a, like, I want to clean up my yard and make it a little bit more fire safe. You can call down and ask the fire department to come out and do a yard assessment. And they'll give you some pointers on how to make your home more safe. So it's kind of a cool little deal.
BB&A used to have a group to go and check it.
So BB&A has their forestry department. When I talked to Woodsy, I think it was last year, he said they were 2 years behind. Mm. Their wait list was a 2-year time period. So, yeah, there is, but the fire department is free. Come out, tell you what they would think, because they're part of the FireWise program now. So they can tell you, give you pointers on things that you may have overlooked. Because a new set of eyes is going to see something that I don't, oh no, that's just where I always store my fuel. Because, yeah.
Somebody's tree rubbing my house.
What I wanted to add about the indoor air quality is it's our homes and we can control it. They have indoor ventilation systems, and it might cost us extra to breathe clean air in our homes, but I promise it's worth it. They say ventilation is the #1 effective way to get rid of mold and all the other stuff. And I just installed an air exchanger in my home, and holy cow, in the past year, the way I feel about myself, I didn't even know it. My home, before I had the air exchanger in, my home was running at 70%. And I thought, that's normal. And then when I talked to these people, they're like, no, we got to get it down to 30 to 40%. Then it's like, I live on the coast, I'm always in the water. It's like, we breathe water all the time. they're like, no, in your home, it should be down 30–40%. And in the past year, it's come down, and my activity has increased so much with the air quality in my home. And yeah, we removed mold since we put in the air exchanger and stuff. We had mold problems. And maybe that was a big difference in my own life. When we reduce the humidity, we reduce the mold. It all coincides. And I really stress air exchanger ourselves in our home.
I would encourage.
I was just gonna say, I would, so that, again, this goes back to the days when I was at Bristol Bay Native Association, and I worked with the Curyung Tribal Council, and essentially wrote the grant proposals for them, but they supported 3 movies, 3 films.
I wanted to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
That was one of the ones I wanted to show Tina. But
Yeah.
long.
So, but again, there was 3. The first one was really basic, how we, things that we're already talking about. And then the last one, because it goes back to the wildfires, not only, how you can minimize, but what you need to do if a wildfire occurs, and it walks you through a whole sequence of things, and it even includes Billy Trefon, who's the longest native firefighter in the state of Alaska. He's from Mount Dalton. And I still remember he's, talking about thunder fires, they just choke you, But anyways, it'd be great if the tribe put those links to those videos on their website, because again, what captures people is when you see stuff and it's local. I mean, that was the whole idea, to get local people being the ones in the videos.
Oh, I encourage everybody in the back. There's a bunch of flyers. Please take some. Please some. There's some about wood stove safety, how to properly wet wood is a waste. There's all kinds of stuff back there. So please take through. Don't be shy. Take some. I appreciate it. Sue, thank you for lending all of your years of knowledge to our presentation. So thank you. And thank you to Tab and to Philip. So thank you, everybody. Please let us know if you have questions.
Thank you so much.